morning. Morning. Hindi tayo sa iba ha. Good morning, how are you? Hey guys, good morning. Today's discussion. Good morning. Our discussion for this morning is just a continuation on what we had last week. No, our discussion on the continuation from the discussion on pre-Socratics, and then now we are going to I'm going to emphasize two important philosophers in the Western tradition, no? From the ancient Greeks, no? Somebody is using different email again. So I'm going to flex these two Greek philosophers, no? Parmenides and Heraclitus. So you start reading these two philosophers, Parmenides and Heraclitus. And also I'm going to introduce two very important concepts that you often hear in philosophy, and what this term really mean in philosophy. Anong ibig sabihin nito sa philosophy? So in the course of reading philosophical topics, you will encounter you will you will encounter I'm sorry you will encounter these two words, being and becoming, and what do they really mean in philosophy? What is being and what is becoming? Now, so we will start with Parmenides. Si Parmenides is a very important philosopher in the tradition of the pre-Socratics, and he introduced the concept of permanence in philosophy. That there is what we call as permanence. And a contemporary of Parmenides also have a different theory, no? Who also introduced the concept of change, and that is in the person of Heraclitus. So these two Greek philosophers, they have an opposing theories, no? One in the concept of permanence, the other one in the concept of change. And they introduced this notion of being and becoming. So it was Parmenides who introduced to us the notion of being. Being represents reality, no? So yung if you are going to trace in grammar, yung salitang being, it comes from the verb to be, no? Or what is. So being uh, refers to the continuing presence, no? Meaning what that is which exists, no? And that is being. So any reality which exists is considered as being. The being of this mirror, the being of this computer. But the totality of beings, parang the sum of all beings is often written with a capital B, being. So everything that exists is in short is termed or called as being. So any reality, no, without any specification, as long as it exists, then it is being referred to as being. And so ito kasi si Parmenides, sabi niya, what is, what is not, no? So being is, ganun lang, being is one. So meaning everything there is. So with this notion, no, um, Parmenides is or is proposing the notion of permanence of being. In short, there is a picture of reality that has no origin, no beginning. Maybe the vast universe is something that is in a state of permanence. There is no end and there is no beginning, no? Because it's always there. Yung ano na paniniwala ni Parmenides, what is not uh it's it it's impossible for something to emerge out of nothing. So the presumption is that there always is something that always exists. Walang, in other words, there's no moment of creation, walang simula, because there is the notion of permanence, no? And there is no end also of being. Permanence, kaya nga permanence, no? On the other hand, ito naman si Heraclitus, they are contemporaries, no? But Heraclitus has a different theory, no? For Heraclitus, uh, he is a proponent of the notion of becoming, meaning there is always a state of change, no? There's a moment of change. So the reality is a constant flux. There's always change, no? Then you look at reality, indeed, you see change everywhere, no? As human beings tayo, no, we undergo a process of change, no, from birth to infancy to early childhood, and then we become young adults, and yan, no, merong you became a teenager, then you become an adult, and merong process. Ganun din yung punong kahoy, no, from seed to seedling. In other words, there is growth and development, and then there is decay, there is death. There is always a moment of change, no? So that what Heraclitus referred to as the notion, the concept of becoming. There is change in the world. So magkaiba sila ng teorya, no? Totoo rin ng sinabi ni Heraclitus, in a sense, bakit hindi sang-ayon si Heraclitus kay Parmenides? Because the understanding of change in the standard of Parmenides is different. Kasi yung kanyang change, ang gusto niya mangyari, there would be, when you talk about change, there should be a total annihilation of being, or a total annihilation of an object. That means from being, it suddenly becomes nothing. No, there's a transition from being to nothing, or from something to nothing. In other words, there is uh, annihilation, total annihilation of an object. Say for example that an object would suddenly disappear, no, which is in physics impossible, because there will only be a transformation to a different form, no? Say for example, when you burn a piece of paper, sunugin mo yan, maging ash yan, but it only transform into a different reality, from a piece of paper into an ash or ashes, no? But the substance remain. Andun pa rin yun. Hindi nawawala yung object. Nag-iba lang ng anyo. So, kahit ilagay mo yan sa tubig, it will only discolor the liquid. Kasi nandun pa rin yung material. So, hindi siya nawala, no? Yan yung gusto ni Parmenides na na-emphasize na there's no such thing as change. Nandun pa rin yung object, nag-iba lang ng form, no? There is only transformation but hindi nawala yung object. That's why he disagreed with the notion of change by Heraclitus. So, dalawang magka-opposite na theory in reality, no? When we proceed with the succeeding Greek philosophers, then here comes Plato, no? Plato is both a fan of Parmenides and Heraclitus. Pareho niyang paborito, no? And for that reason, he attempted to reconcile this two opposing theories of Parmenides and Heraclitus. So, paano ni-reconcile ni Plato, no? He came up with the idea of yung dualism, no? There is a dual nature of reality. Merong daw dalawang aspect sa reality. At ito na yung the divided line, no? The theory of the divided line. And as also presented in the allegory of the cave. No? You must become familiar with this one because this is a very important notion. What we believe today with our Christian faith, such as the concept of heaven and earth, that is an example of a duality. No, there is dual nature of reality. One is the physical world, and another is a spiritual realm. What we understood as heaven is not so new actually, because maybe 5 or 6 century before Christ came into this earth, meron na palang ganyang notion. Hindi na pala bago yan, yung paniniwala natin of heaven, because here is Plato, no? Trying to divide reality into two, at dinala niya tong dalawang paborito niyang philosopher, no? Si Parmenides and si Heraclitus. So for Plato, there is a dual nature of reality. There are actually two realities. One, itong tinawag niya na the sensible world, no? The world of senses, the world that we can touch, the world that we can observe, the world that we can experience using our senses, no? Our senses, our sense of touch, sense of smell, with our eyesight, yun yan, no? Makita natin, no? The world that we can hear, no? The other dimension is the ideal world, no? Or could be the spiritual world. So there, in everything, there is a dual nature. In man, for example, there is his body and there is his soul or spirit. Dualism. But for objects, meron din this physical object, and then meron siyang counterpart, no? For Plato, this counterpart is the idea, which comes before the object, no? Yung paniniwala ni Plato, mas nauna ang world of ideas, no? Or the ideal world nauna, and then the sensible world or the world of senses is only a Xerox copy, no? Or a photocopy, no? In other words, it is a duplicate of the ideal world. This sensible world is only a duplication of the ideal world. So the ideal world comes first, then out of the ideal world, we create or maybe God created the sensible world, no? So for objects, for example, this is a book, this is the physical object, no? This belongs to the sensible world because I can hold it. But before it become into reality, all of this had already been in the mind of the author as an idea. So the idea comes first prior to the physical object. So parang there's a mold. For example, when you talk about cookies or pastries, there's a mold of this cookie which existed prior to the actual cookie. Parang ganyan, no? Mayroong dalawang dimension of reality, no? So the human body is also dual, and any object is dual, represented by the object, the physical object itself, and the idea in the mind of a person. The entire universe could have existed in the mind of God prior to its actual creation. Yan ang belief or paniniwala ni Plato, where he creatively combined the two philosophers, Parmenides and Heraclitus. So, in other way, parang sinabi ni Heraclitus, tama ka, ay parang sinabi ni Plato, tama ka Heraclitus, but you are describing the world of change, which is the world of senses. On the other hand, Parmenides, tama ka rin, but you are describing another reality, which is the intelligible world or the world of ideas. So, pinagsama niya yung dalawang paborito niya na philosopher. A student of Plato is also a dualist in a different sense, no? So Aristotle, who will be our first moral philosopher later on, makita natin na iba rin yung pagkaintindi ni Aristotle or iba yung kanyang version ng dualism, no? So, okay, here is Plato. So this is Plato, no? This is Plato. Ayan, so sa panahon nila, wala silang Instagram, walang camera. So the way they represent a portrait is through sculpting. Ito ang bust ni Plato, no? So out of the actual image, nag-create yung sculptor ng illustration, no? So ito yon, bato ang ginamit kasi wala silang selfie nung kapanahunan nila, no? So this is an illustration from the allegory of the cave, no? Please read the story. It's a very interesting story. There are prisoners in the cave from birth. They are already sitting in the position in the in the wall, looking at the walls, no, facing the walls. The allegory of the cave is, of course, it is only a fabricated story. It's not a true story, of course. That's why it's just an allegory. But it's a story that gives us a lesson, no? So, tingnan mo diyan, the prisoners are positioned in a way that since birth, the only reality they have known are the shadows in the wall, this area. But they are not aware that outside the cave, there's a bigger picture of reality. So there's an opening, and because there is light outside of the cave, whenever there are people passing the opening, it creates a reflection to the walls. No? And the prisoners had come to have known reality as projected on the walls. Yan ang kanilang reality. No? So in that illustration, meron ding dual picture of reality. No? The world of shadows represent the world of senses. Tayo, yung the physical reality which is subject to change. But there is a bigger reality outside the cave which represents the intelligible world or the world of ideas. Kasi for Plato believed that human beings, for example, when they die, of course the body will decompose, but the soul will go back to the intelligible world. So very similar to our Christian belief, no, that when we die, our soul will remain and then we'll go back to what we call as heaven. So this is the comparison, no, the ideas are perfect, like this cat, no, there it's a perfect cat, no, because it belongs to the idea, while the actual cat in the world of senses could be imperfect, mabaho, siguro putol yung kanyang yung niya tail niya, no. And so it's an imperfect, but the idea for Plato, it's assumed to be perfect because it is an idea, no? Baga the idea is universal and eternal, no. Yan, so that is Plato, no. Man is an embodied soul, the soul is eternal, it will separate from the body when the person die. And so yan ang ni Plato. Pagkaiba ni Plato, no. So Aristotle naman, ibang usapan naman yung kay Aristotle, but we will discuss Aristotle some other time, no. But Aristotle's dualism is sort of a reaction from the dualism of Plato. Pagkaiba sila ng notion of dualism. So actually, nandito rin yan dito sa slideshow na ito. Dito lang din yan. But we will not be able to discuss this one kasi pag sinimula natin, mahaba na ito. So this is Aristotle, a student of Plato. Siya yung moral philosopher na i-feature natin sa ating ancient period, no. So yun nga yung sinabi ko, si Aristotle is the tutor of the great Alexander. So ang kanyang notion of dualism ay makikita sa kanyang concept of hylomorphism. Hylo, or from hyle, which means matter, and morphos, meaning form. The theory of matter and form. Si Aristotle came up with these four causes, no. What are the four causes? Unang-una, mayroong efficient cause. So, pag sinabi natin the world is caused by God, no? God is the efficient cause, no? The formal cause is the idea, no? In this case, meron siyang monument or statue na ginawa, no? The efficient cause is the sculptor or the builder. The formal cause, form, is the concept, no, in the mind of the builder. Anong gusto kong gawin dito sa batong ito? So gagawin ko itong monument. The material cost is the matter being used, no. This, in this case, maybe a block of granite. Then the final cost is the final product, no, the actual object that will be placed in the agora, no, in the market. Ayan. So this the four causes of Aristotle. There are four causes, no, efficient, formal, material, and final cause. So like Plato, Aristotle is also a dualist. Pero yung kanya is the world of form and the world of matter, no. In this example, there is matter, the material object, no, granite, and the form is yung the concept. Pero iba yung understanding ni Plato, no, very um, very earthly ang dualism ni Aristotle. Kasi in Plato, if you remember, nauna yung form, the concept or idea comes first prior to the actual object. But for Plato, yung kanyang dualism ay nauna yung material eh. Ito muna. This is the material cause. And then the formal cause comes after the material cause. Or if not after, maybe all at the same time. Nangyaring nagkaroon ka ng formal cause when you see the material cause. No? So yan ang pagkakaiba ng kanilang dualism, no, between Plato and Aristotle. So in philosophy, you will often hear the terms being and becoming. So yan pala ang ibig sabihin yan. Being is the referring to the reality as permanence. Becoming is the transformation of reality, meaning there is development, there is change. And then Plato was able to synthesize this opposite theory of being and becoming. And then Aristotle came up with his own version of dualism, no, after Plato. Yan, as represented in his notion of hylomorphism. Yan. So, malalim ang usapin dito actually. This is Western philosophy, and these ideas became the foundation of Western philosophy. Plato, Aristotle, these are the big names of Greek philosophy, together with Socrates. And then of course, the pre-Socratic philosophers. In particular, I'd like, yun nga, si Parmenides and Heraclitus. Yan, so you will see that there is a development of thoughts, of their thoughts, from the pre-Socratics to Socrates. Socrates is also a very interesting figure in philosophy, basahin niyo yung The Trial and Death of Socrates. Very interesting, having the courage to resist or oppose the tradition of the ancient Greeks and resulting to his death as punishment. Inatulan siya for certain or accusations of criminal accusations from the state, Kaya kaya namatay itong si Socrates. And then Plato, being a student of Socrates, Socrates left a mark in the young Plato, for the reason that Plato wrote his philosophy and using Socrates as his mouthpiece in the story, you know. So yung allegory of the cave was written by Plato, but it was told by Socrates as a story. So that's why malilito ka kung sino ba talagang nagsabi niyan. Si Plato ba talaga? Was it Plato's original fabrication of his mind? Or was it told by Socrates really in real life? And heard by Plato being a student of Socrates. So yan ang di natin matukoy kung sinong original niyan. But the story remained to be very interesting. Tingnan mo yung try to develop interest with Greek philosophy kasi ito yung foundation talaga ng ng Western culture, no, in a sense, no, being the foundation also of Western philosophy, no? So yung natin, yung paniniwala natin, the Christian belief, no, concepts of the dual nature of reality, this physical world, and then the heavenly world of the divine being, the supreme being, yung tinatawag natin heaven, a dualist in a sense, similar to the understanding of Plato. That's why later in medieval philosophy, hindi nahirapan si Saint Augustine na i-reconcile with the Bible itong philosophy ni Plato, no? In a similar manner that Saint Thomas Aquinas in medieval philosophy was able to reconcile the philosophy of Aristotle with the teachings of Christianity, the teachings of the Bible. Ni-reconcile nila, no? So, especially in a moment of doubt na sinasabing kasi ito Bible, kasi when there are critics of the Catholic faith na sinasabi nilang wala namang rational justification ang Bible, no. And then here comes, for example, Saint Augustine and Saint Thomas Aquinas, who came up with a rational justification of the Catholic faith, no, using philosophy. So pinakita nila na hindi totoong walang rational justification ang Bible. And as a matter of fact, they were able to write very long treatises on that contributes to our understanding of the divine being or God. So yun ang transition from ancient philosophy to medieval philosophy. Yan, so tingnan natin, yun ang pagkakaiba, no. In medieval philosophy, doon natin, that's the reign of the church, that's the period where the church reigns in the medieval period, and no wonder that most of the philosophy which occurred in the medieval times were also religious, trying to defend the Catholic Church. And so in medieval philosophy, after Aristotle, we study also Saint Thomas Aquinas. Then maybe we will have a short background also of medieval philosophy, no? To be able for us to understand better the philosophy of Saint Thomas Aquinas, who is a Dominican priest. So I hope nakita nyo na yung foundation, no, from pre-Socratic philosophy, and then Plato, and then we will move later to medieval philosophy. Makita mo na yung foundation na build ng mga founders ng Greek philosophy, no. Nakita mo na meron na may in short, what is important here is to be able to recognize that concepts develop in a process. Hindi yung bigla na lang na-realize mong ganito, no? But the culture and civilization was part of the development of an idea. So, hindi kusang ganyan lang, no? When you try to understand Christianity, no? Jesus Christ, for example, hindi yun kusang naisip lang, no? At ginawa yung Bible. But there's a history. There are lives being sacrificed, no? The martyrs, for example, they offer their lives, no, to the point of having to risk their own lives to death, no. So pag sinabi mong when you doubt the Christian faith, pero you would be amused as to how these martyrs were able to risk, to suffer their own lives, no, for the sake of their for their Christian faith. So yung mga martyr, di pa pala sila Catholic noon, but they were Christians, no. The early Christians who were persecuted, no. In the Bible, yung si Saul, who later became Paul, was one of the prosecutors of the Catholic faith. And so may history yan. May totoong, there are people who really believe, no, who 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 testify their their Christian faith by sacrificing their own lives. 'Di ba? Isipin mo, ba't ka ba magpapakamatay sa isang paniniwala kung ito'y hindi totoo? 'Di ba? So that's how strong their faith in Jesus, no? To the point that even their own lives will be sacrificed for their faith. Yan. Do you have any questions? So, I appreciate if you ask questions because that means you are interested with the topic, with the lesson, and maybe you have read the materials that I have sent to you last Monday. Any questions in philosophy? Because it would tell me that you are engaged with the discussion. Wala? Walang clarification kung nakikinig ba kayo. Yun pala ay walang clarification dahil wala naman palang nakikinig sa akin. Walang katanungan? Ano ba naman kayo? Wala man lang magtatanong sa akin. Sumakit yung aking lalamunan. Wala man lang magtatanong sa akin. Okay, let me check the attendance. Allison Gale, say present please. Jericho Joshua, Maria Rebby, Justin Ken. Justin present. Flory Joem. Jom. Patrick Jerome. Banaag. Jerome. Elaine Gabriel. Thank you, Gab. Jose Antonio. Ina Jaline. Mary Margaret. Present. Wait lang, basahin ko lang yung chat. Ezekiel. Saan ba si Ezekiel? Enroll mo lang. Sige, ano ka na lang dito. Iba rin tong si Eusebio. Deacon Ezekiel. Ay, iba rin to. Eduardo Lorenzo. Camille. Dana Faye. Marie. Marie Angeline. Present. Ryan Christopher. Maria Kim. Eliza. Ana Maria. Mark Lawrence. Okay. Jessica. Jane Matthew. Ivy Nicole. Fiona Marie. Van Andrew. Althea Dominic. Present. Leila. May di natawag? Okay. Ito. So, can you open the camera for a screenshot? Buksan na yung camera nyo. Mabilis lang. Dali Poging-pogi wait lang Wait lang. Ayan guys, pwede na yan guys. Okay, thank you so much. Walang any concerns about the class, the lessons, the readings. May iba pa ba na hindi na kapasok sa Google Classroom? Wala nang concerns? Okay, so kung meron kayong mga concerns, feel free to message lang sa email. And then, find time also to read yung mga materials. So, hopefully, we'll be able to discuss Aristotle's ethics by next week, and then maybe we'll have our first learning task also next week. Okay? So, thank you so much for your time. Uh, so, we'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you. Breakfast muna kayo. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Have a nice day. Close this one. 30 to 6. Yes, ma'am. Good morning. Hello? Hello? Wala akong naririnig. Let's have coffee. $62. That's 1 hour. Be back in a short while. tigil ko muna itong live na to. See you again. I'll be live later today. Mga 1 o'clock or 1:30. One, two, three, four, five, six. So, see you again later for another live stream.